There's a mistake. Moonlight, you guys won Best Picture.
You like me. Right now. You like me.
Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted this.
Mom, I just want an Oscar.
I'm Connor Wold and welcome back to another episode of the Ultimate Oscar Showdown. And this week we're going to be jumping into the 20th century, the 1990s, for the Best Supporting Actor category, where I will tier rank the winners from 1990 to 1999 of the Academy Awards. I will tier rank their performances from S tier being the highest, D tier being the lowest. I think we're going to get some S tiers in this video, some really iconic performances like last week as well. The supporting actor category has been very rich in delivering us some really interesting, iconic performances, so I'm excited to talk about that. But if you're new to the series, this is what I've been doing. I've been tier ranking the Oscar winners from the acting categories. I've already looked at the Best Actor category and the Best Actress category. I've already tier ranked the Best Picture winners from the 2010s all the way to the 1940s. So we've got a whole bunch of videos if you want to go on a little bit of a binge of them. Currently we're in the supporting actor, so as the trend continues, I'll be covering the 80s next week and then the 70s. And then when we're done with that, we'll jump into the Best Supporting Actress category, starting off from the 2010s and working our way decade by decade to the 1970s. And then if you're a fan of this channel, you probably know about Old's Oscar Countdown, my 8th season of predicting the Oscars. That will start up once the supporting actress category is done. So we're near the end of the series. So trying to get a little bit more into the Oscar season, but still, probably still, I don't know, 7 to 8 weeks, something like that. So still some time to enjoy this series. And you guys have been showing a lot of support for this series, which I'm greatly appreciated for. So as always, please continue to leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear your own personal tier rankings with some explanations, some thoughts on the videos. Even if you disagree with my opinions, that's totally fine. Just love to hear your thoughts. But without further ado, let's jump into things, starting off with the 1990 winner, Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, which of course is an iconic performance. I love Goodfellas, Martin Scorsese, maybe my all-time favorite director, and Goodfellas is just an eminently rewatchable movie. And during the many rewatches of Goodfellas, you realize just how talented Joe Pesci is in this movie, because of course he's very funny and boisterous, and he's definitely defined, I think, this sort of short man syndrome, really angry, swearing all the time, sort of fast-paced but also very funny kind of a character, which he employs for many years past this. But I think this movie, and then the same year also have Home Alone, and I think the year before, 89, is Lethal Weapon 2, so it's like this kind of time period where he really defines that. He is so great at, and similar to someone like Heath Ledger in Dark Knight, which we talked about last week. He is so unpredictable, he's so chaotic. You're not sure if you should laugh or if he's joking around or if he's not. So he has that very seriousness to him as well, just that sort of blank stare, psychotic stare that we see in the iconic, I'm funny how am I funny to you kind of a scene. And you really do, the first time you watch it, you do believe that he's about to blow up. And then of course he switches on the dime and becomes very funny. I almost got you. And I think there's an underrated element to that acting style, just to be incredibly psychotic in one sense, and then immediately on a dime switch and be funny and boisterous. So you understand the sort of seriousness of the stare and the psychotic that helps understand why this guy's a killer and he's so good at his job, but also his intense loyalty that he has to his friends. So then the friendship aspect is also able to be really built and solidified there. So just super funny, super intense, scary, dynamic performance, absolutely iconic stuff. Joe Pesci in Goodfellas absolutely will go into the S tier. Then the 1991 winner, Jack Palance for City Slickers, which is one of the more unique Oscar wins, particularly when looking at it from a 2023 viewpoint, because it is something that would be virtually impossible today. First of all, A, that a big budget comedy would have been made, B, that would have even been considered for an Oscar, and then C, that it ended up actually winning an Oscar. That seems like something that would never happen today. But it did at the time, and I think this is an example of the character as written being more interesting than the performance itself. And spoilers for City Slickers, but of course, Jack Palance's character dies in the film, and that's actually a common occurrence within a lot of these characters in the supporting actor category. A lot of them die, And I think that makes sense because you have this strong emotional connection to this character, and then you see them die, and that creates a more impactful emotional connection. For me, though, that emotional connection wasn't really established in this movie. You know, Jack Palance is good at the tough guy stuff, but it's not really an evolution from some of the stuff he was doing in Shane or The Professionals. It's sort of just more of the same, except now he's older, and we never had a chance to give Jack Palance his Oscar. Let's give it, you know, it's his time, kind of career respective award, more so than the performance itself. So for me, just not my favorite part about this very funny movie, a little bit forgettable. So a little bit strange, I think, that it won for this performance. So for me, it will go into the C tier. Then the 92 winner, Gene Hackman, for Unforgiven. And we talked about this movie on the Best Picture 90s ranking, and I rewatched it once again in preparation for these videos, and I liked it more so on the rewatch than I did the first time around, where I wasn't really a huge fan of it. And the rewatch really solidified to me just how much Hackman is a key character in the movie. I mean, he's almost a co-lead. It's his story, then it's Eastwood's story. Now, I do like Eastwood's story more than I do like Hackman's story. That being said, I think Hackman does a good job at creating a real sort of tragic figure, because you see him be like, and reminisce about the times where he once was a hero, but then became a sheriff, and then you see how the power sort of corrupted him. And Hackman does a good job at helping us understand that this guy doesn't realize how bad he is, but still communicating to the audience that this is, you know, a guy who's totally corrupted by power and has become a bad guy, even though he's thinking about and reminiscing these great times. And Hackman's great at that, at just looking off into the corner of the eye and making us feel as if his character is really reliving these memories, and he's really thinking about something, and you can see it on his face. And Hackman's an incredible actor, so in those scenes, he's very great at just giving this character an interesting and formidable background, and sort of a tragic background, but then also helping us understand who he is as a person. So that when we get the sort of final showdown at the end, we're a little bit conflicted in that we don't necessarily know who to cheer for. We don't like the sheriff very much, and we don't really like Clint Eastwood's character, because yes, he's getting revenge, but he's done a lot of bad stuff in his life too, and that just adds, I think, to the overall themes of that anti-hero element to the film. So Hackman's a solid actor, and even though I don't love his storyline, I think he does enough with the performance to make it compelling. So for me, it will go into the B tier. Then the 1993 winner, Tommy Lee Jones, for The Fugitive, which is a movie I hadn't seen in a while and decided to rewatch for this episode. And once again, I was just blown away by Tommy Lee Jones. Of course, I remembered the iconic moments of the I don't care and his general sort of gruff, sort of grumpy kind of attitude of just being frustrated by trying to catch this guy. But what was insightful on the rewatch, something I didn't really totally understand, I think, the first time around, and was notable this time, was just how sensitive he was. This is actually a secretly very sensitive performance, because Tommy Lee Jones actually improvised a lot of his dialogue. You can see his contributions as an actor through those lines of dialogue, through those moments. And the movie has these sequences, but also Tommy Lee adds to the line deliveries a sense of sensitivity, a sense of caring. You really do understand that he cares for his team. And because we have these moments where he has these kind of sly, sarcastic kind of in-jokes, or just talking to his team, telling them good job, or telling them thanks for that, for example, we understand why the team works for him, which I think is integral to the ultimate sort of emotional connection and storytelling of the film that Tommy Lee adds by making him a sensitive character. So we understand, oh, I get why these people work so hard for him, why there's a team behind him. I get why he's competent. I get why he's successful in doing this thing. But then, of course, it also helps us connect and have more of a tension within the story, because we want Harrison Ford's character to get away because he's innocent, but then also we don't want to see Tommy Lee Jones get embarrassed. We kind of want to see him get him too. So it's kind of like this unique, interesting push and pull. It's fascinating just to see Tommy Lee not worry about oh, is this sensitive moment within the film, is that going to make my character seem less cool or less mysterious? And no, actually, it does the opposite. He's able to sort of have a 360 viewpoint of the character and not a linear view of the character and go, actually, if I make him more sensitive, he becomes more human and he becomes more of a real character. It makes me understand him more. It makes me want to root for him even more because of that. It makes me understand why he's good at his job and what he's sacrificing, and adds all this extra emotional dimension to the character that creates ultimately more enjoyment and more connection within the film. So it's easy to think, oh, this guy's a manhunt guy, I'm just going to play him straight and badass and cool. But it's actually the smaller stuff, it's the sensitive stuff, it's the moments after he shoots the guy right by his ear and talks to him and gives him a little sarcastic dig. But you know, and Tommy Lee's able to make it clear to us that he does care for this, and is having that moment with his team member because, you know, he cares about how he's doing. So for me, a secretly sensitive performance and an iconic performance as well. So I think this one's going to go into the S tier. Then the 1994 winner, Martin Landau for Ed Wood, which is a movie I saw early on in my film-loving career, learning more about Tim Burton and the history of film. And I love the movie, I love the performance, and I didn't even realize that it was so much of a controversial winner because it beat out Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction. I didn't realize that until later. And on this channel, as we've discussed, we always look at the performance. We don't look at who it beat out or who should have won, just the performance itself. Is this a good performance? We're ranking just performances, not who should have won. But even if you did want to compare the different two performances, I love Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction. That's an iconic character, but it's not like Martin Landau is so terrible in this movie that it's not even a competition. I think it's a valid opinion if you think Landau's better than Samuel Jackson, because he's excellent in this film. I didn't know who Bela Lugosi was going into the film, and yet I think Landau was still, even without understanding that context, you still understand and feel like he captures the soul of this man, of being passionate about movies and storytelling and grateful for the industry for making him the man he was, but also sort of being, you know, jealous of Boris Karloff and being kind of a Hungarian hothead in that regard. And the sort of ability to do two things. First of all, capture the melancholy of the film, but then also capture the acting style of the film. If you look at his line deliveries, the melancholy, I think, perfectly works well to the character of Bela Lugosi, of being someone who's had a great career, but is on the twilight of his career, and it has to sort of slum it with these kids that aren't making the best movie, but he's being asked to do it, and he's, you know, compelled by the infectious love of Ed Wood, so he does it anyway. So there's a great melancholy that captures, I think, the soul of Lugosi. But then also, what's great about the performance is not just his ability to understand Lugosi, but also to help us understand as an audience the tone of the film. When we see his performance style, and then we also see, of course, Johnny Depp's performance style, we sort of get, oh, this is kind of like them making an Ed Wood movie in the movie about Ed Wood in the style of Ed Wood. There is sort of a heightened B-movie aspect to it. Everything is over-the-top camp. So for his ability to completely sort of match the tone and understanding of the film, of course you have to give major props to Tim Burton for guiding their actors so that they're all in the similar sort of same film, the same tone, same kind of a movie that they understand. But Landau in particular, because this character is integral early on in the film, we understand, oh, this is the kind of movie we're trying to make, and he gives us that, his performance gives us that window into understanding the themes and the tone and the atmosphere of the film, which I think is a great talent that not every actor can do, but Landau does here absolutely. So an excellent performance for me that will go into the A tier. And then the 1995 winner, Kevin Spacey for The Usual Suspects. Now, this is a performance that is difficult to watch nowadays because of Kevin Spacey's allegations, but like I mentioned, we ultimately look at the performance itself and not, you know, everything else. And I think it's undeniable that he is incredible in this film. Maybe his most iconic character, definitely right up there. And the film, I think, is a little bit maybe slightly overrated, just because I knew the twist going into it, so I wasn't as surprised. So I'm just looking at a normal thriller. But the reason why I think the movie has sustained the length of time that it has is because of Spacey and his performance, because of how much of an interesting character he is and how much he adds to the movie. he always keeps you guessing. He's the narrator, kind of a narrative driver of the story, and he's always unsure. You're unsure, is this guy really smart? Is he really dumb? How much was he involved? Was he the mastermind? Was he not? And Spacey constantly sort of going back and forth, whether it be these crying scenes or these scenes where he's incredibly intense. He's almost also great because so much of the movie is him recalling things. He's got this great, almost campfire story-esque way of telling the story and keeping you engaged, and this happened and then this, and his kind of rhythm and pace of his speech lulls you into a very sort of manipulative and satisfying way. And, you know, I knew the twist going into the movie, so I was looking at it from that lens and that perspective. And when you know just how much Spacey is helping to control the narrative and what he's doing as an actor to reel you in and make you believe one thing and then maybe undercutting that and then showing something off, then actually showing something off and then giving you the final reveal, it's just so well crafted, and you see how much command Spacey has of this character. It's truly a sight to see, and this is undoubtedly, I think, a really terrific, engaging performance that contributes so much to the success of the film. So for me, it's another A-tier performance. Then the 1996 winner, Cuba Gooding Jr. for Jerry Maguire, which was a movie I decided to rewatch in anticipation for this episode because when you think about Jerry Maguire, you think of the famous scenes. You think of Show Me the Money. You think of that sort of final tense football scene, the hug at the end. And you think, and I was trying to think, like, is this a good performance or is this just a one-note kind of the same sort of a thing? And I'm glad and happy to say that it's not a one-note performance. That he definitely does do the sort of boisterous, fun, funny, loud kind of performance very well. There's a lot of scenes where he is out-charming, a very charming actor in Tom Cruise, and is very powerful and loud and in your face, and it's great and funny. And if it was just that, I probably would give this, you know, a good grade as well. But what's fascinating about it is that it is more than that. That Cuba actually does bring more than just those boisterous, loud, comedic, physical kind of scenes. Whether it be the hug at the end or when Cruise gets married to Dorothy, we see just a single look that Cuba has when he's watching the videotapes and looks over to Cruise, because he realizes that they hadn't had the talk, and he realizes that maybe he's not 100% sure if he loves this woman. And, you know, he gives him sort of this simple, non-confrontational speech, but underneath all of that we understand is that this is not an approval on his regard, and he's getting disappointed, and then there's a look of shame. And really all he does that is a small speech and then a look, but we understand through that look immediately, oh, right, you didn't have the speech right, so this isn't necessarily guaranteed to last. You should have messed up here. You didn't do the right thing. And that's testament to Cuba and his acting, he's able to convey, and that there's actually these subtle, smaller, quieter moments on top of the big, boisterous, bombastic, funny stuff that maybe helped him win the Oscar. But on rewatch, I think it's actually secretly more complex and more depth, and has more depth than most people think, and or you know, when they recall the movie they think about. So if you haven't seen the movie, give yourself a favor, rewatch it and look for his performance, because it is, I think, secretly more complex than people think. So for me, it will go into the A tier. Again, lots of A's, lots of S's, good year so far. Now let's jump into the 1997 winner, Robin Williams for Good Will Hunting. And this is a prototypical kind of a performance in that it is the comedian turned serious. And we've seen a lot of people post Robin Williams, Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd and Jim Carrey being a notable one, try to go from being the funny guy to being more of a serious role or having certain serious roles. And you could say maybe Steve Martin did it a little bit before Robin Williams, but really I think, you know, in 87, Good Morning Vietnam, then you have Dead Poet Society 89, Awakenings 90, there's Good Will Hunting in 97, and then he does this afterwards too with Insomnia and 1 Hour Photo. The reason why this performance ultimately works is because he's just a talented actor. He's a great comedian, but he's not a comedian trying to do something that's serious, that's opposite of what he's known for. It's just him also being a great comedian, but also being a really good actor too. Pretty much all of his scenes are these one-on-ones with Matt Damon, and because he plays, you know, this gifted kid's therapist, who's not really a therapist, who's just a teacher. He has this very unconventional style of doing the psychoanalysis. And what's great about him in these scenes is just in his ability to break down some of the barriers that Matt Damon's character has and really disarm him. And when he's disarming him, he's also disarming the audience and helping us engage with his story and him as a person. And I've been thinking about this a lot, this idea of leaning in or leaning away. You know, certain actors are big and loud, and you lean away, and you're so impressed by either their acting talent or how much they're bringing towards you. They're almost coming out of the screen. But then there's also performances and times where you want to lean in, where actors are quiet and they're smaller, and you're trying to, you don't always see their face necessarily, and you're trying to understand, and you're leaning in to hear better or to see a little bit clearer. And Williams does the latter. He helps us lean in. He's quiet. He's very non-threatening in this movie and helps us disarm. And while he's disarming Matt Damon's character, he's also, I think, disarming the audience and helping us feel connected to this character. And he does so with little things, a little shrug of the shoulder, never moving his hands too quickly. Very sort of matter-of-fact in his dialogue, slow pauses in between his speeches, these small little subtle things that Williams does to help us feel engaged and to lean in to the character and to the story, so that we have more emotional connection within the scene with him as a character, as he's opening up to us. And his lines are never these big grand statements of wisdom. They're suggestions. They're, here, I'll put this on a plate. If you want to eat, you can. It's just what's going to be. He's never too big. He's never too over the top. And that works so well. So for these little mannerisms that Williams is able to do to help us trust this character and to break down that wall and to disarm Will, Matt Damon's character, but also secretly helping us emotionally connect to this character. It's a beautifully written script, but I do think this is maybe Williams' best performance, which is saying a lot, but he is just so good in this movie. Absolutely a great actor that gave us a lifetime of great performances, but still went too soon, and this performance will go into the S tier. Then the 1998 winner, James Coburn, for Affliction, playing this abusive alcoholic father to Nick Nolte's character. Although Nick Nolte, no longer a kid, has flashbacks with this character, but also present day stuff as well. And Coburn, while this is a sort of legacy award like Jack Palance, he is very effective in the movie, and he's not in a lot of the movie, and his role is essentially to be the very intense, abusive alcoholic father, and he's excellent at doing that, so I will give him credit for that, even though when you think about the movie, I actually don't really think about Coburn as much as I do, say, Nick Nolte's character or Willem Dafoe. But it is interesting to see how Nick Nolte's character actually is a little bit different around his father, because he still has that trauma. He's still scared of him. He still sees him as this sort of dangerous, scary man. And I think Nolte treats him as such. So an interesting kind of a psychological element there too, where he's still on his case even in the older years. And then also it's a great performance because of how he plays drunk. You know, it's difficult to play drunk, and it's even, I think, more difficult to play this kind of a drunk, which is the angry drunk. So you have to be intense and serious and loud, but you can't be too eloquent, so to seem as you're still not drunk. It's an interesting sort of a fine line that Coburn is able to bring there. And I think just for his ability to be intense and to be scary, he is genuinely scary in this movie. It helps us understand Nolte's character and the abuse that he went through and why he is the way he is. So asked to do that and executed very well. Coburn, his performance will go into the B tier. Then Michael Caine in Cider House Rules is the 1999 winner, which is still one of the strangest Oscar wins in my opinion, just because this wasn't a makeup Oscar, because he'd already won before. This was his second Oscar. He's not in a lot of the movie. It was a Best Picture nominee, so I guess they did really like the movie and they wanted to give it something, so maybe that's the reasoning there. But because this is a movie I hadn't seen until a couple of years ago, I sort of knew what Michael Caine was going to do. It was kind of, for me, autopilot Michael Caine, kind of what he's been doing for a long time, being kind of gregarious but wise and intelligent and sensitive. And he does that here, but he doesn't necessarily blow you away in how well he's doing it. It just seems like, oh yeah, this is Michael Caine. He's a good actor. He's doing a good job. Maybe I over appreciate that and I take that for credit, and maybe this was the beginning of that kind of persona, but I don't really think so, because he was doing that before this as well. It's just a little bit of a strange performance. Not that he's bad, he is good in it, just kind of a standard performance. So for me, it will go, I think, into the C tier. But that's about it, guys. Take a look at the list. Lots of S's, lots of A's. So I think this was overall a very good decade for Best Supporting Actor winners. Of course, next week I'll look at the Best 1980 Supporting Actor winners, and there's some interesting ones there too, so I hope you stick around for that. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.